Welcome to Trulyfit, the online fitness marketplace connecting pros and clients through unique fitness business software.
Jenn, thank you so much for joining the Trulyfit Podcast again. Round one, when you were on, we talked about networking, and I thought that was a great conversation. I had a lot of people write in telling me that they learned a lot, that they agreed, that they disagreed, all of the different things. And what I find interesting is as long as people are writing into me, that's all that matters. I don't care if they agree, if they disagree, what they take from it, as long as they're actively participating. But that was a great conversation. What have you been up to since? What's going on with you and your business?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. Love chatting with you. Let's see, what's the latest and greatest? I just recently launched my next cohort for my group coaching, working on a new video series that's going to be a little bit, my podcast is Salad with a Side of Fries. Mm-hmm. So this video series is a little bit of a salad with a side of fries tour of New York City restaurants. So we're going to eat salad fries at a bunch of places and, have some fun with it. So yeah.
Tell me about the equipment for the video series. Are you going like high level here and buying special camera equipment and things of that nature? Do you have a background in that? Are you hiring someone? What's the process?
So interesting. This came about very organically through somebody that I met. He was filming video promotions for some small businesses in New York. I won this promotion opportunity. So we were filming and he does some of these restaurant videos around the city. He records it all on his iPhone. He edits it directly on his iPhone. And I think part of why I said yes to this project and this idea is because it's nothing on me, right? Or very little on me. I get to show up and eat some salad and fries and talk and, add this element. But so he's really taking on all the heavy lifting, and his background is more in production, and sort of producing photo and video shoots. And over the pandemic, he got into some of this filming. So, but he does it all on his iPhone. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. I'm sort of saying this out loud to myself because I'm so bad at collaborating with people. I'm trying to force myself to do it more, but I'm so like, especially with the podcast, like it's my baby. Yep. So I want to handle every single part of it. But as we know,
totally,
it's the worst thing to do, to not offload those tasks, because you just get so inundated with the nonsense.
I am in the process right now of outsourcing my post-production, and it is so challenging. It might be harder than starting the podcast, because it's like the control freak in me is like,
yeah. I mean,
having to let go.
It's part of being an entrepreneur. You have to sort of write out your day to day and what you want to do. And then eventually you have to be honest with yourself and be like, these 5 things I can't handle, or else I'm not going to be able to do these other 5 things. And it's, in my opinion, maybe the hardest part of being an entrepreneur. We all have ideas. We all have energy to do things, but it's like, okay, what things am I better served in my business doing? And what things am I better served not doing? And how do I not lie to myself? And that's why I think it's good too, to, again, something that I don't do enough is have an outside coach of some sort who's even overviewing you, even if you're a coach who coaches 20 other people.
Indeed.
Yeah,
for sure. I find all great coaches have coaches.
Yeah. Yeah, they really do. So initially we were going to talk a little bit about nutrition labels. This came up randomly. And I think it's something that people struggle with, either that they think they know more than they do, either that they think nothing matters, or I see the most sort of the naivety between them thinking what is important that isn't important, and vice versa. So give me like a generality that you will walk down with your clients when you're working with them to say, like, this is what you should be looking at, this is what you should not be looking at.
Yeah. So first of all, what we're not looking at is percent daily value. It is based on, first of all, the idea of percent daily value was what the human body needs to not deteriorate into developing rickets and scurvy. That is not about health or wellness or vitality. So ignore it completely. The calories I actually tell people to generally ignore unless we are down to the nitty-gritty between two choices. Fundamentally, the first thing I'm always looking at is protein and net carbs. And especially when if we're looking at something to be a snack versus something to be, and I'm specifically, I mean, we had talked about like protein bars or, nutrition snacks kind of a thing. So, if we're looking for something to be a meal replacement, it's a different story than if we're looking for something to be a snack, than if we're looking for something to be pre or post workout. So meals for a woman, I always recommend 4 to 6 ounces of protein. Snacks, 2 to 3. For a man or somebody with male biology, 6 to 8 ounces of protein at a meal, 2 to 3 at a snack. When we're reading a nutrition label, 7 grams of protein is about 1 ounce of like a cooked meat or 1 egg. So if we think about that, all of these bars that are generally marketed to us as high in protein, you'll be lucky if they have 2 ounces of protein.
Yeah, I would say most of the protein bars you see now, like let's go with like a nut butter bar. It's like a Cliff bar. You're talking 6, maybe they have 8 grams of protein, typically 6 or 7 grams of protein, but they market themselves off as protein bars.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So fundamentally, right, we're looking at maybe 1 ounce of protein. A proper snack is 2 to 3. Right. So probably not quite hitting it there. The next thing I'm looking at is net carbs, and which is talking about fiber and sugar and net carbs. So if I'm looking for pre or post workout fuel, I do not want fiber. I want that protein on its own. If we are looking for more of a snack or part of a meal, on at least 5 grams fiber, if not. So we also want to look at where the fiber is coming from. So I'd be fine if the bar had 5 grams and we're having the bar with an apple to get some extra fiber, or some, berries or something else to get some extra fiber in there. But generally 5 grams of fiber or more is that threshold, which is very difficult to find, and so let me back up. Net carbs and why this is important. So net carbs are the amount of carbohydrates in this food that are likely or will impact your blood sugar. The reason why that's important is because turns out in all the research, right, our metabolic health is directly tied to our blood sugar. And if we are storing fat or burning fat, is tied to our blood sugar. So when our blood sugar is too high and when it's too low, we are storing fat. So please stop telling clients to eat less and move more. Like, we eat less, we have low blood sugar, we're storing everything we then eat as fat. Sidebar. So coming back to the net carbs piece, when I'm reading this food label, net carbs are your total carbs, subtracting out the fiber, which we want, sugar alcohols, because those are sweeteners that don't impact our blood sugar, and glycerin. If it's sugar alcohols and glycerin may or may not be listed, but essentially we take them out because they don't impact our blood sugar. We want our net carbs to be single digits. You will be hard pressed to find a lot of these, especially going back to that like Cliff Bar that you were mentioning. Most of them are off the charts in terms of that net carb count, right? Because they aren't paying attention to the fiber and they're not paying attention to the sugar, and so it puts us into this place where we think we're making really great choices. We've gone to the effort of choosing these things without realizing sometimes what's actually in there.
Yeah, that's great information. And I want to back up a little bit because there's general population who listen to this, and maybe we should explain a few sort of high level things before we get into the specifics. So for example, when people say I'm having like a protein bar as opposed to like a meal replacement. So if we're thinking of meal replacements, all of this caveat, goal dependent, person dependent.
Totally.
Right? If I weigh 250 pounds and my goal is to be a linebacker for the Giants, It's, my goals are different than if I weigh 130 pounds and I just go to bar class and want to maintain a certain body fat percentage, right? So, but having a protein bar, typically what maybe trainers think that their clients are saying is that they're having somewhere between, let's say, that 15 and 30 range of protein. So where the conversation gets messed up, right, where we're talking past each other, is the client saying, I had a protein bar. And unless you're actually like recording their calories, you find out, yeah, no, they're just having that Cliff Bar that had 6 grams of protein.
Well, and here's the thing, the calories isn't even going to tell you that. Right.
Well, you can work backwards from the calories, right? So if you know the
calories,
not
necessarily, because it's a function of where the calories are coming from. Yeah. So we can have 2 bars that are both 150 calories.
Yeah.
With very different nutrient profiles.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's important to say, right? So
the question, totally. And the question I say to everybody is, cool, which one? What protein bar did you have? Yeah. Right. And I work with my clients to understand how to read those labels too, and I get it. A lot of your listeners are more on the fitness side than the nutrition side, like I am, but to have those conversations and to say, hey, here are a few things to look at when you're choosing a bar.
And like you said, I think the most important thing that you said this whole time, it's all important, but what I really want to cling to is, earlier in the conversation, you said this is like a comparative thing, right? So you're not trying to make people feel bad, like, oh, you're making terrible decisions all the time. But like when you have the choice between bar A, bar B, and bar C, this is what you're looking for if you want to make the best choice for you and your body and your goals. And I think that's very important here. And you could maybe disagree with this or agree with this and say what you will, but I do think it's very goal dependent and person dependent, because like anything else in life, a stimuli, we're all going to react differently to a stimuli. You get a massage, I get a massage, you may be sore the next day, I may feel great the next day, right? Our bodies work in different ways. And I can tell you, for example, even though the protein type in Quest bars is the same as other protein types, they don't agree with me. I eat a Quest bar, I feel like I have a rock in my stomach. It doesn't matter what else is going on. It could be psychosomatic. It could be that something else is going on. I don't know. But I think it's important for people to try different bars and not only look at the nutritional content, but like ask yourself, whoever like woo-woo, like how do I feel? Like, did I feel great after that bar? Did I feel like I was satiated? Did I feel like I had the energy? And ask those questions.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of times, when we aren't necessarily as familiar with looking at the different things or really understanding what we're choosing, or even in touch with our own body to know how we're feeling, right? A lot of times, so when and again, this is sort of a little bit at the nitty gritty, but Quest bars have a lot of, they aren't all listed. So I believe they have a lot more sugar alcohols than are listed there. And that can certainly upset someone's stomach. Same with depending on how much fiber and where the fiber is coming from. If someone's not used to that much fiber from one thing, it's not going to feel good to them. And similarly, whey protein versus protein isolate, very different in the body. One has lactose, one doesn't. So some people might be reacting to things. So it's about being able to ask those questions, like you're saying, which are phenomenal and exactly what we all want to be thinking about. And then also looking at those things with a bit of a closer eye to play detective and figure out exactly what the pieces are that we're potentially reacting to.
Yeah, I was talking to Dr. Chris Swart on the podcast, and we were talking about 10 misconceptions in the fitness industry. And one thing that he was explaining to me was that there's actually sort of like, he was describing it, there's a protein synthesis that sort of works as a light switch. And unless you have enough of that protein, that light switch isn't going to be turned on. And that's why we should also look at having more protein per meal. And some people don't do that. They don't agree with that, right? They'll space all of their meals out. They're like, okay, I'm eating 8 meals a day. They each have 10 grams of protein, but that doesn't really work for your body the same way insofar as muscle building specifically, as eating bigger, more laden protein meals like you talked about with that higher ounce of protein ratio.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I think it also comes down to what's the amino acid profile of the proteins that you're eating. Yeah. Is it getting us all of the essential amino acids, or is it, what we would call like not a perfect protein, not all of the essential amino acids? And then how are we building that? How are we fitting it together? And, it's going back to what you were saying before. It is so individual as far as Do you work better having bigger meals and maybe a snack or two? Do you feel better eating every couple hours and having less at a time? And I think for everybody too, what works for you can also change at different times in your life or different days of the week.
Yeah. Great information.
And
yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it's one of those things where we and our clients can get into this place of paying attention to the rules more than we pay attention to our body. And it's really important. I mean, I think we teach ourselves out of understanding our body's own signals. And it's something really important for us to help our clients all come back to.
Totally. I think it's okay. And actually a good thing to have sort of a grand philosophy, but then it shouldn't be like, so like all the little micro tasks you do inside your philosophy, you shouldn't be so nailed down to, right? So it's like, okay, maybe my grand philosophy is I want to make sure that I'm having enough clean, high level, for lack of a better term, protein in my diet, right? But it doesn't always have to be that I'm having it at 8 a.m. or that I'm having it at this time, or that I'm only eating this type of bar, right? It's over time, we're going to change. Sometimes it's because, again, we're getting older. Sometimes it's because our workout regimens change. So for example, I only probably touch weights once a week now because I don't really care about holding on to muscle. I'm older. I'm 36 years old. I care about injury prevention. So I'm doing much more mobility. Yep. I'm playing basketball. I do kickboxing. I move my body in all directions. I only hit weights once, maybe twice a week. So because of that, my levels have changed, right? I'm not as hungry. Mm-hmm. I don't need the amount of calories that I did before because I'm not maintaining that level of muscle. And those are just things that if you know your body well, you'll come accustomed to. And if you don't, it's a journey, but that's why you have to maybe hire some sort of coach like Jenn to help you through that process.
And I think with our clients, it's also, they're not going to identify, oh, I need fewer calories or I need to adjust this. It's how hungry are you? Right? Like we want to make sure we're also communicating these things in a way that resonates with them to say, well, today might feel different than yesterday. Yeah. If you repeat that day again, does it feel the same? Let's see.
I also think it's really interesting that people always look at things in this 24-hour clock because that's how we do as humans. So someone will say like, oh, must have been something I ate yesterday. I'm like, it could have been something you ate 3 days ago that is now just like sort of causing this internal disruption slowly in your body. And now you have inflammation and issues based upon what you ate. So I think people will point to the wrong things. They do that in fitness a lot. As a personal trainer, I have clients who come in all the time and they're like, my neck hurts. It must have been something we did yesterday in lifting. But then you find out that they sleep on 4 pillows. You're like, well, which one is it? Is it your 8 hours sleeping on 4 pillows? Or is it the lat pull we did yesterday? It's more likely the thing you do day to day. So it is important that we are investigative journalists, both on the nutrition side and on the fitness side with our clients. Absolutely. Because they always pinpoint the wrong things.
Right. And you're exactly right. I mean, especially with food sensitivities and allergies and common allergens, soy, gluten, dairy, all of those symptoms can show up to 72 hours later. Like a lot can happen in 3 days. And that's part of why I also make the argument for writing things down. It's not about being the food police. It's because we don't remember what happened 10 minutes ago, let alone 3 days ago, to figure out what the food was that potentially created this symptom 3 days from now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've found over the course of my journey, writing out things food-based wise, I took maybe 1 full year in my early 20s, 25, 26, and I wrote down every single thing I ate for a year. And I learned so much in that process. I never did it again, never even on any level, but I learned so much during that process. Everything from, number one, I was lying to myself most of the time and not factoring in alcohol. Really, that's what it came down to, right? So it's you have all these goals, but are you writing down the drinks you're having at these networking things on Thursday and Friday and Saturday? No, you're not. But the other thing was, now subconsciously, I can look at food and have a really good estimate of the caloric value of that food, right? All of the macronutrients, what exactly they are, down to maybe I'm talking 20 calories, because I've had so much experience with writing those things down and learning that. And I think that's the journey, right? It's not about being obsessive. It's about just gaining a better understanding so that you don't have to do it again.
Yeah. And I think, for a lot of clients, especially, we can get a lot of resistance to writing things down. I'm a big fan of writing things down. I'm not a big fan of counting and measuring and weighing. Again, because to me, it's more about the quality of the food.
Yeah.
And if we're eating quality food, the quantity will take care of itself. I'm not worried about you overeating broccoli, right? Your body knows how to self-regulate broccoli. Your body does not know how to self-regulate Skittles.
Yeah.
So, if what we're eating is quality nutrition, I'm not concerned about weighing and measuring and counting. Having said that, people have a lot of resistance to writing that stuff down, and they say, oh, it makes me more obsessive. And I always share my story, which is I felt the same way. I used to resist it a lot. But what I realized is that when I don't write it down, it's not that I'm not tracking. It's that I'm just tracking in my head. And what a difference it made when it was on paper and I no longer had to keep track of it in my head. Like, there's a whole lot of brain capacity that opens up that could be used for really amazing things. That's right now going toward trying to remember and keep track of every single thing we ate or drank.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. That's a lot of, we only have so much bandwidth and mental capacity. Do you really want to be spending it on trying to remember what you ate, Tuesday morning on a Friday? Or do you just want to have to look at an Excel sheet and see what's going on? And again, it does help in that for the other people like myself who are lying to themselves, it does help. And I found that with clients, I don't really dabble in nutrition with clients, but yeah. I used to. And when I did, there were certain things that they would always leave out. One, of course, was alcohol, right? They never wrote their drinks down. And what they didn't understand from that perspective is, as me dealing with the personal training side, there's so many other offshoots that come from drinking alcohol. I drink alcohol probably once a week. I'm not telling you not to drink alcohol, but what I'm saying
totally. My first episode of my podcast was the truth about alcohol.
Yeah. So, okay. So you understand that. So you're not sleeping. You're not really getting into REM if you're drinking too much, right? So then you have bad sleep, and then obviously the next morning your body's craving bad food for a host of different reasons. Some say it's because, you're low on energy from not sleeping. So your body wants higher caloric dense foods. And that's why you want these bad foods. And there's effects the snowball effects that come down from that. And if I don't know that as the personal trainer, and then, we're not meeting your goals, that could be one of the main reasons. And it actually was a main reason I saw with a lot of clients was their drinking habits. And sometimes the drinking habits weren't that bad. And you could add to this because this was your first episode. Mm-hmm. For me, however, maybe shitty information this is to say to somebody. And again, this is outside of my pay grade. So I wouldn't tell this to somebody who had an issue, but I would say this to a friend. You were better off drinking hard one day a week than you are having 2 glasses of wine every night. The reason why is your body's then dependent upon that sugar. It's waiting for it at night. And guess what? 2 glasses of wine over 30 days is 60 glasses. There's no way you're going to have 60 glasses if you drink 4 Fridays a month. If you do, you got a problem. So it's less total glasses and it's less dependency on your body. I don't know if you agree with that statement or not.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, right? Like, I think the real issue with alcohol, and we could talk about it, a lot of times it's like, oh, it's the empty calories, it's, whatever, it's the sugar, it's the mixers, there's a lot of things out there about the alcohol. For me, it comes down to the liver, right? Our liver has to detox. Our liver is responsible for processing a whole lot of things, right? From cleaning out the air we breathe to, everything from, sugar and fat and any toxin, right? Alcohol. Oh, here's the big kicker is that the liver does not know how to multitask. So the liver has to prioritize what it works on based on how toxic something is. Alcohol, right? We call it intoxicated. Alcohol tops the scale of those toxins, which means until that alcohol is processed out of your system, your liver will not deal with the fat, the protein, the sugar, the air we're breathing, the water we're drinking. Our liver will not do anything else other than that alcohol. until it's gone. And so it's really about saying, what's the burden we're putting on our liver and what are we expecting it to do? It can only do so much. And so what that looks like for everybody, I think, is different. But if it's having to go through this process constantly, right? Also then your sleep, which helps us detoxify and helps us do all these kinds of things and reset, right? If that's also not happening, it just exacerbates everything. And so, you know, everybody has to make their choices for themselves on what they're drinking, when they're drinking, how much they're drinking. I tell everybody, we get healthier each day we keep alcohol away. And you do you. Like, you make your decisions, place of understanding the choices.
Yeah. You know what I think is interesting, and it might not work, this conversation or this point with the liver specifically because of what you just explained, but there are a lot of processes in the body. Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about these. And of course, I'm going to forget the scientific name, that rely upon you stressing your body. And to not stress your body is to do it a disservice. So it's basically, you know, and I will break this down.
Well, there's eustress.
Yes. And I will break this
down. Good stress.
Good stress. I will break this down to the ultimate sort of like easy metaphor here. I have calluses on my hand, and there's a reason I have calluses on my hand, because I pick up weights that are threaded all the time. So now I can grab things that are threaded and pointy and not hurt my hands, right? There are processes in the body that go on that are similar to that. And I'm sure we all know people who eat ridiculously clean. And if they have that one burger, they're so inflamed that their body can't handle it and they can't go out for a week. So I do think there is a point in which it's not always great to run away from all stressors of the body. And I'm not talking about
totally
just working out, but all of these other things, having, like you said, having the fries sometimes and having these oils and doing these things and making sure your body is accustomed to being able to break these things down isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Totally. I mean, listen, you stress, right? But the stress that's good for our system is things like exercise, you know, waking up in the morning, getting that, you know, there are stressors that build the body, right? Working out, breaking down that muscle, that's a stressor on the body. Yeah. And it can help us, you know, so there's like everything. It's that ugly word, balance, you know, but for each person, just like with, you know, how many meals you're eating, it looks different for everybody.
Yeah, completely. And I had a conversation about that fitness wise, and sort of to add to the point you said before, how we change over time. It's also very important to change your fitness routines over time. As you get older, your goals should change, your priorities should change, your body is going to be changing, and in accordance with your diet and your workout and all of that starts to change. And the level of stress you want to put on your body is lessened to a degree. What I mean by that is you're not going to be doing high impact stuff, or you shouldn't be, most likely, if you're 50 years old and you've had knee issues, right? It's time to maybe go in the pool and not do plyometric jumping all the time, right? And there's all of these changes that we have to make. And there's no difference probably with nutrition. If you've beat your body up over the years and you weren't taking care of yourself, you may have to go in overdrive and start eating much healthier as you get into older age, because unfortunately you're playing catch up. You haven't taken care of your body.
And yeah, I mean, but I want to say too, I mean, it's never too late to start.
No,
it's never too early to start.
Yeah.
Just start now. And it is amazing. I mean, the human body is incredible. The more I learn, the more dumbfounded I am at everything that happens without us having to think about it, right? And thank goodness that we don't have to think about all these things. But part of that means if we start to give our system nutrition, if we start to give our system some activity, it knows what to do. And the way cell function works, our body's constantly regenerating. So I want to say it's like 84 or 86 days. Every like 84 or 86 days, there isn't a single cell today that's the same as it will be then. And so if we think about it that way, what we do today has everything to do with where we'll be 12 weeks from now. And those choices can add up, and we can choose to make a different choice at any given time. The key to all of it, I think, on every aspect of health is consistency.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes the challenge when we have these, like the person who never eats French fries, to me, they're a food group, but the person who never eats these things and then has it and can't, our body has adapted. It says, I don't need this anymore. I'm going to stop making it, right? The enzymes that allow you to break those foods down. And so living in those extremes in the black and white have their own consequences sometimes. And so it's all about finding the balance of the activity and the nutrition and the stress and the sleep and everything else we have going on to live our best life.
And it's easier for someone like you and me who is invested in this on a day-to-day basis, whether it is working with clients, whether it is doing our own sort of autodidact self-studying, whether it's just our previous knowledge of these things, right? We're invested in this, but where the general population struggles, I'm sure your clients and my clients, is when they're not consistent, they fall off the wagon. I don't really like that terminology, but whatever. They stop and they beat themselves up. And I think that's where we come in, right? As fitness professionals, as nutrition professionals, as coaches, whatever you want to call yourself, is to let our clients know that it is inevitable. You are going to, I don't even want to call it fail. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have offshoots and bad weeks and bad months and maybe even a bad year. But that doesn't mean like you need to stop completely. And if that means that you pay someone to keep you accountable, then that's what you have to do.
Right. I think, I say to everybody, the only failure is thing, right? Everything else is part of the process. And part of what we're doing is learning how to sort of bob and weave and navigate this zigzag, but we're not going to get from where we are to where we want to be in a straight line. The expectation that that's the path is actually what's setting everybody up. And in fact, there isn't a coach I know who has that expectation for their clients, but everybody else, and our clients show up with that idea. And I think, our role in any capacity with a client is to encourage them and cheer them on to keep going.
Yeah. And there's so much that goes into that. I want to talk about how this works in nutrition, but from the lifting standpoint, they've done all these studies where you're more likely to get injured in an exercise if you're nervous about the exercise. And it's because your nervous system is it's all out of whack, right? Before you do the exercise. Yep. And I think that's, people talk about, and it seems like cliche or just like groupthink nonsense where they say you can't have a bad relationship with food, but no, you can't, right? Like if you have that thought that every time you eat this thing, you then feel bad, right? Internally, you feel bad. Well, that has repercussions physiologically that can spiral out of control.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of research around this, but, I don't even think you need all the data and the research. Essentially, even going back to just looking at the nervous system and the stress or anxiety, right, around something, and I see it a lot in the beating themselves up piece that you mentioned before, right? When we're in a stress response, right? Fight or flight. Any body process that is not critical to survival in fight or flight turns off. Part of what turns off when we're in fight or flight is our metabolism. We do not digest food when we are in fight or flight, at least not properly, right? We do not grow our hair. We do not function reproductively when we are constantly in fight or flight, because those things are not critical to survival in that moment, right? Our fight or flight response was designed to last 20 minutes. We now have it lasting 20 years or more, right? So I said to a client the other day, I was like, you're stressing about the almond milk is worse than drinking the almond milk. Drink the effing almond milk, or the wine for that matter, whatever it is, right? If we're stressing about it, that's actually more toxic to the body than the food itself.
Yeah.
In some capacities, with an asterisk.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I don't have much experience with, well, it's funny, I do, but accidentally. So intuitive eating, You can talk, maybe you can talk to a little bit about that. So, right, that's been a fad. I had someone on the podcast talk about it, intuitive eating, sort of describe it. And of course, I push back a little bit, just saying, I've intuitively been eating basically like the last 10 years of my life, not even knowing that I've been intuitively eating, right?
Right.
Like it's just what I do. But I think it's, naive to think that somebody who doesn't have education is going to intuitively eat properly, right? So if
Exactly.
if I'm a 16-year-old and I don't have any money and there's just like food in my house, like I'm not going to be intuitively eating properly. Like there needs to be a background, like base education, right? And everything that I know this sounds like a weird psychology thing, but the things that in your head subconsciously have so much to do with whatever decisions you're making, and you can't separate those two things out, right? So, and we know that education has so much to do with even pain. So I just had a guy on the podcast called Sam Fisnick, and it's going to be out this Monday, and he's basically an expert in chronic pain. He spent his whole life like dealing with chronic pain. He's a massage therapist and a bunch of other degrees, but he talks about how they've shown all the data that people who know less about their pain are always going to be in more pain than people who know more about the pain, right? And there is no line of like diminishing returns. The more you know about your pain, the less pain you'll potentially be in. And I think, you could speak to intuitive eating, maybe even give a brief description of it, but that was my issue with intuitive eating.
Yeah. And I sort of have the same love-hate with intuitive eating. First of all, I think the idea is you follow your body's signals to choose foods and quantities and timing. My challenge with it has a bunch of facets, right? One thing, first of all, I think it's just become the latest fad diet, right? I think statistically, a vast majority of the population has tried a diet at some point in their life. That's probably 100% of people.
Yeah.
And a vast majority of people have tried many diets in their lifetime. What that means is at any point in time in their life, they have followed rules instead of following their body. So the idea that out of nowhere, someone is going to only pay attention to their body, we have turned that off. How many times have we been like, nope, I'm not eating. I know you're telling me you're hungry, but I'm not listening. I was told to eat less, right? Every time we do that, we are training our body not to respond to ghrelin. Every time we don't stop eating when we're full, we teach our body not to respond to leptin, right? Leptin and ghrelin are hormones that tell us when we're satisfied and when we're hungry. Part of metabolic syndrome. Every time we pay attention to rules instead of what our body is telling us. Remember the days of don't eat past 7 p.m., right? How many people were sitting up at night watching TV, like just telling themselves like, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, right? Even though they feel like they're hungry. So we could get into sort of the psychology and the subconscious mind with the word don't, because that doesn't work either. But the idea that we're going to flip a switch and all of a sudden know what it feels like to be hungry, know what it feels like to stop when we're satisfied, is really misplaced. And I think it's just another way that people are being set up by this industry.
I agree. And to compare it to personal training, I intuitively work out because I am an expert in this area. I can go to the gym at any given time, listen to my body and say, you know what, today I haven't done back in a while. I'm going to do pull-ups. I'm going to go on a run. I'm going to finish with some back exercises, whatever. I never plan my workouts. I never have to. I don't write anything out because it's all up here because I'm an expert and I have that knowledge, right? And I can see that for someone like you. If Jen decides she wants to completely intuitive eat because of all of her knowledge and the things that she's known, the things that she's learned and tried and saw with her clients anecdotally that has worked and has not worked and read, you can have the ability to do that and do it properly. Because subconsciously you're going to be making good decisions more than you're not going to be making good decisions, and you know your body. And my hesitations here, like you just mentioned, is for the people who don't know their body yet, and they don't have that coaching and they don't have that background to go from having zero education to now only having to listen to their body and having no rules or restrictions. If I were to put that into a fitness realm, if I just told some average 43-year-old who's never worked out before, go to Planet Fitness, just do whatever you want. Doesn't matter. pick up any weight, do whatever you want. Everything is good. All exercise is good. Yeah, all exercise is good, but there are some things that are better. And until you understand the basis of things, you're not going to really be like advancing your physical prowess.
Right. And there's a piece to form, right? And
Yeah.
understanding what moves are focusing in which places and balancing and all these kinds of things. And you're exactly right. It's when I work with someone, part of it is a process of learning to notice what our body is feeling, to notice what's happening. Oh, I didn't feel so great when I ate that. That's amazing. Now we know, right? Or
but then you could explain it, right? Then you could explain it. So Jenn could say, oh, what did you eat? And they said they ate that. And then Jenn could say, well, chances are the reason you, like you explained to me, the reason what maybe the Quest bar doesn't agree with me is because it has excess sugar alcohols in it, right? So I can put the science to the body, right? So someone comes to me and goes, oh, well, I did this workout and I don't feel good. And I say, well, this is why, right? You have bad knee placement in this. And I think we have to marry those two things together.
Exactly. I believe the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it is understanding why, right? So people know that we're supposed to eat vegetables, know that we're supposed to move our bodies. People know that we're supposed to manage our stress in air quotes, right? But doing those things, prioritizing those things is very different when we understand why. When we notice how we feel when we do those things and when we don't. So part of the process when I'm working with somebody, just going back to the intuitive eating thing and understanding hunger and satiety, is a practice in here are the guidelines. Let's see what happens, right? Here are the food groups we're choosing from. Here's approximate quantities, right? We've cleaned out our system, so we're going to be a little bit more sensitive to things. And then let's see what happens. What do you notice? And part of that is also asking the questions of how'd you sleep? Right. And even I have a group that just started a couple weeks ago. We were on a call this week, and one person on there is one of these people who said to me at the jump, I have a really hard time knowing what's happening in my body. Like somebody will say, did you feel any difference? And I never know. I never feel anything. And I was like, okay, cool. I get that that's where we're starting at, and I'm going to help you work on this, right? This is one piece in particular for her that we're going to focus on. So in one of our calls this week, somebody else was saying, I felt really good. And so I said, hey, can I come back to you? Do you mind getting more specific? When you say you felt really good, tell me more about what that was or what those things were in particular, because that might help this other person identify if any of those same things were happening. And that's where we can really start to get specific and help people tune in. And again, the idea that we're going to go from one side of the coin to the other is a bit misguided. So yeah, we might overeat this time. Cool. When did you notice that you ate too much? Well, about 30 minutes after I ate. Awesome. Next time, wouldn't it be cool if you noticed it right after the meal? And maybe the time before that, you noticed it, 2/3 of the way through, that this is getting that quantity. It's a progression of getting from where we are to where we want to be. The same way you progress with weights, we do the same thing in all the other areas, but we don't expect that of ourselves. We expect to be able to go from, whatever diet we're following to the latest fad diet of intuitive eating. And you were saying before too, this just popped back into my head of, people sort of have this on off thing or, not necessarily as consistent. And I think it's not so much on and off. It's on and on and on and on every time being a different plan, right? So today we're keto, tomorrow we're intermittent fasting, the day after that we're intuitive eating. And of course our body is freaking out.
Yeah, going 0 to 60 is never a good thing, right? You have to take steps slow. And that's part of, again, it's not the general population's specialty and they just want to jump in head first and go right for it. And we have to slow them down and say, we fix one thing at a time. That's what we do in fitness. At least that's what I do. We do assessments, we do modifications. I start, maybe you work out 1 day a week, and a month later it's 2 days. And before 6 months in, now you're working out 3 or 4 days a week. And the same thing, I'm sure, in the nutrition field. I just wanted to hit on something else you said. As far as the language is concerned, I talk about this a lot. I'm going to beat a dead horse here, but it's important that we understand our clients don't speak our language, right? So like you said, she said good. Well, what does good mean, right? He said he's in pain. Well, what does pain mean? And I know some people think this is like semantics, but it's not, because it ends up being very important, right? If they say pain is something shooting down their leg, well, now we know it's nerve, and now it's serious. So now we can't work out today and we have to do other things, as opposed to muscle soreness. If they say, they're not feeling well, what does that mean? That could mean that I'm not feeling well if I have 2 glasses of wine, I'm a wuss. For someone else, they might have stage 4 cancer. We don't know what's going on, right? So we have to keep digging in and making sure that our language matches their parlance, because we all speak a different language when it comes to sort of describing good and bad and pain and those sorts of things.
1,000%. And I'm very particular about the words I use with my clients. When I talk about food, there's nothing that is good and there's nothing that is bad. Like, the words we use have more impact than we realize. And I encourage everybody, avoid the word should, avoid good and bad. And I mean, I did a whole episode on words, but it's amazing what happens when we start to just shift the language that we use, and inherently our clients will shift their language, and shifting the language shifts the behavior.
Makes perfect sense to not use that. But unfortunately, that is the language of the general population. So it is something that has to be slowly coached out. It's not really in fitness. People don't say there's bad exercises, but of course in the nutrition world, that's all it is, right? People will literally just group foods into good and bad. They will put them in 2 categories. And obviously that's, like you said, that's a problem. There's a psychology behind that. If you don't look at foods as good and bad, and you look at foods as just energy I'm putting into my body, and then you'll have a healthier relationship, which in turn will make you make better decisions. Now, I'm going to ask you sort of like a rapid fire thing. Give me, if you're just starting with a client, right? General population, they know nothing. They're 100 pounds overweight, and you want to give them sort of like first steps. What is the first 1, 2, or 3 things you tell them in the start of their journey?
Sure. So this also changes depending on where they're starting at, right? Like, the profile we just went through is not like, I would typically be doing an intake to get much more of a picture of what's happening, but general guideline, where to start: protein and fiber. So protein and fiber at every meal makes removing fat no big deal. Protein is clean, lean protein. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care what kind it is. Clean, lean protein, whatever you like. Don't eat what you don't like, right? Fiber is vegetables and sometimes fruit. The other thing we need every day are some quality fats: walnuts, almonds, oil, avocado oil, right? A couple quality fats, protein and fiber. The only difference between meals and snacks is how much we have at a time. Start there and let's see what happens.
That's great information. Simple, easy to remember. Jenn, where can the listeners find more about you? Tell them your podcast again, Salad with Fries. Where do they find that? Is it on all platforms? And maybe if they want to reach out to you directly with any questions.
Absolutely. So Salad with a Side of Fries is the podcast. Wherever you like to listen, we will be there. saladwithasideoffries.com is the website. All social media at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. And please reach out to me. Like, I want to hear, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let's have a conversation. I love nothing more than hearing from you. So please reach out.
My guest today has been Jenn Trepeck. Jenn, thanks for joining the Trulyfit Podcast.
Thanks, Steve. Love it.